Jenny, hello, how are you?
Hi, nice to see you.
It's great to meet you. I've got to say, I'm sorry I keep struggling and tripping over the title of your talk. You've created quite the tongue twister for me there.
You got it correct. It's SQS Lite.
Brilliant. So I understand that you're about to graduate with a master's degree. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I am doing a master's degree at Georgia Tech and about to graduate in a couple of months, doing my last class now.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, it must have been quite the journey getting your master's during these crazy times. But I'm very pleased that you're here with us today.
But yeah, I'm definitely glad I pulled it through.
Okay, well, I'm really looking forward to what you're going to be talking about. So please welcome Jenny Eckstein with creating SQS Lite, lightweight mock of AWS SQS.
Hi, my name is Jenny Eckstein. I'm a senior software engineer at Lithium by ADP. This is my first time presenting at NodeConf. Today, I will tell you a little about my new open source project and also share my experience with open source and some lessons I have learned. But first, I want to tell you a story. We have all been there when we just discovered coding. We decide to build a cool application. It's going to have a front end, a back end, the bells and the whistles, and of course, an AWS service. Anything to make it look cool, experiment with the new tech stack, and of course, get that first programming gig we dream about. We open our first AWS account, put in the credit card, and the work begins. We configure a service, we add code, creating queue works, sending message works, receiving message works. Now let's automate. Let's run tests on every code change. We add a new feature, and all tests rerun and pass. With the great feeling of accomplishment, we finish the application and go to bed, where the dreams are of all the great things we can build and amazing opportunities we see ahead. We wake up in the morning, full of determination to conquer the world. We grab our phone, we check the email, and we find an $8,000 bill from AWS. The valuable life lesson is learned, but there is a solution. There is an existing solution to this problem, Local Stack. Local Stack is local cloud stack that is designed to emulate AWS behavior. It would emulate AWS behavior without having to reach AWS and rack up the bill. Imagine you can use an entire AWS, but without actually using AWS. Local Stack solves the problem. However, setup, configuration, requirements are bulky. Local Stack is designed to run for a large application. When the end goal is to test small application or just a piece of a larger platform, Local Stack might be too much hassle for you. Local Stack is great. However, it is not the best solution for a small application. The idea for SQSLite came from modules such as SQSLite, DynaLite, and Server. And now we have SQSLite. We were looking for mocks for AWS services, but realized that there was no mock module for SQS other than Local Stack. We designed it to easily test SQS functionality without paying for AWS. It saves cost on development, just like Local Stack, but it is lightweight. It's implemented using native Node.js. It is open source. You can use it as a node module in your application, run unit tests against SQS mock server, or use it as a CLI tool. You write your code just as if you were to use real AWS. But with the simple flip of a switch, you can use SQSLite. At Lithium, we started replacing our testing of SQS from AWS mock to SQSLite. Let me show you some code. First, I will show you how you can use SQS Lite in development. We begin by importing SQS Lite on line 1 and AWS SDK on line 2. SQS Lite would be our server. That would host all the data for our queue, just like AWS would. And AWS SDK is an AWS client that we would use to access SQS Lite data, just like we would use it to access real AWS SQS. The block on line 4 through 11, we start our SQS Lite server. SQS Lite uses Fastify under the hood. We instantiate our SQS Lite server and listen on some port. Once connection is established, we begin our work. On line 13, we create our AWS client, AWS SQS client, just like we would do as if we worked with real AWS, except we pass in the endpoint parameter to redirect calls from AWS to our SQS Lite that runs locally. Then, on the block line 15 through 36, we make use of an AWS SDK client to create queue and provide queue parameter number on line 19. Then proceed by sending a message and then retrieving the same message. We can see what sample output would look like. When we send the message and receive the message, we need to also ensure that the URL for the queue point to the address where the SQS Lite server is running, and the queue name is appended at the end of it. Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies. Now, let's say we finish the application. We decide to switch back and to real AWS SQS, and we simply can remove that endpoint parameter on line 13 from our AWS SQS client to reach real AWS SQS. And it would no longer be redirected to SQS Lite. We can also use SQS Lite for unit testing. The same idea applies. If we want to write unit tests for our application, we would create a test file and again, import SQS Lite and AWS SDK. Start our server on some port and in before all block, we would start our server on line 13. And once server is connected, we create AWS SQS client with the endpoint where the SQS Lite server is running. To make sure our tests hit SQS Lite, then we can start writing a test. On line 27 through 30, we can see such tests. We simply call AWS SQS client with our request and parameters. And when we get the response, we assert for our correctness. We can also use SQS Lite as a command line interface. On the left-hand side of the terminal, we start SQS Lite on port 4567. Then on the right side of the terminal, we use AWS CLI with the queue commands as before. We once again must provide the local host endpoint to our commands where the SQS Lite is running. We can see the output for create queue, send message, and receive message commands, getting the same output as we saw before. When I became an open source contributor, I did not really think what it would take. I just created the project and started to code. I would like to share with you 7 lessons I learned becoming an open source contributor. So, you want to become an open source contributor. That is fantastic. You will learn a great deal and you will offer a solution for many out there who need it. Your library might run on millions of devices and be used in production by big companies all around the world. But are you ready for that responsibility? By no means am I trying to discourage you from starting your own project. I believe every developer should try and see if open source might become their passion. When I started SQS Lite, I did not think of what comes after the module is out there. My mind was focused on optimizing and adding features rather than support, documentation, and logistics of keeping it alive. So let's talk what it takes to be an open source developer. Over my development career, I saw popular open source modules become abandoned, to a great frustration of engineers who have come to rely on them. There is no judgment. After all, the creator is doing something for free, and we all should be grateful for their contribution. However, as creators, we should plan for the future, for what comes after us. So, lesson number 1, understand the responsibility as an open source contributor. Have next of kin. Allow others to maintain it. Don't solely rely on yourself. On the other hand, as a developer and the user of a product, give back, tackle issues, and offer support. You can start to contribute by proofreading documentation, creating designs, and providing code usage examples. There is nothing more an open source developer loves than the message starting with, "Here's the PR for the bug I found." So lesson number 2, as someone who uses popular library, give back. So how do you get an idea for an open source project? Fix what bothers you most. When you find yourself doing a repeated task, catching yourself on the thought that there must be a better way. When you find a bug or wish that there was just one more feature in this module, you found your opportunity. Start with something you care about and take pride in creating it. Spend time proofreading, understanding the code, and make meaningful contributions. Don't be that person who contributes for statistics. Lesson number 3, don't wait for the great idea. Start small, build features, fix bugs. Open source is a lot about communication. Make communication easy for the users. If they come to report a bug, have a bug report template, which outlines all the steps and procedures they need to take. If they submitted the PR, make sure there is a checklist of items for them to verify. Don't let anyone push the production branch. Automate where you can. Dependencies, build and release pipelines. Take Semver seriously. Don't break your users. Label your issues correctly. Add incentives for the first-time contributors, and the more robust your setups and configurations, the more time you have to work on your project. Lesson number 4, ease communications with protocols. Having many eyes on your project will render many more good ideas. Contributors will see things that you have missed. After all, it is always easier to improve on someone's work rather than build from scratch. Take this as an opportunity to learn, evaluate the proposal, and give back the credit where it's due, even if your ego hurts. Praise your contributors, acknowledge their time and effort. Release notes and readmes are appropriate for this. Lesson number 5, learn from your contributors. Be polite but firm when someone is rude. Occasionally, there would be a frustrated user who would demand that their bug be fixed immediately, or their PR is perfect and should be merged right away, or opens an entire issue explaining how to refactor your application to make it better. Those poor unfortunate souls just need to be politely explained that they can either follow protocols or always build their own project. They are not worth the stress. Therefore, saying no to those bullies is essential. Lesson number 6, don't let anybody grind you down. Many of us suffer from imposter syndrome. We don't believe we're good enough, certainly not good enough to offer a product. Certainly not good enough to offer a product for others to use. It's hard to believe in your abilities when your last pull request received 12 comments, a failed build, and consistent of a major flaw, which could break half the company. Well, so what? We all have bad days. What's important is to put yourself out there and improve on the feedback that you receive. Your first product might not be that good, but it is a lesson that you learn that counts. Your next product will have one less to fail, and you might have a winner on your hands. So go ahead, be brave, publish that work, and conquer the open source world. Lesson number 7, don't let the imposter syndrome hold you back. So let's recap. These open source lessons helped me to become a better open source contributor, and the lessons I try to live by every day. First, understand the responsibility. Second, give back. Third, don't wait for the great idea. 4, is communication with protocols. 5, learn from your contributors. 6, don't let anybody grind you down. And 7, don't let imposter syndrome hold you back. Some of the future plans I have for SQSLite includes building a user interface to ease debugging. I also want to add data persistence so you can resume your work the next day. Driving adoption for the module is also one of the big goals. I cannot wait to see other ideas engineers will bring. Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking to you today. You can reach me on Twitter at Jenny, ECK_codes. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Jenny, thank you very much, and very well done. I know you said that was your first NerdConf talk. It went down brilliantly. Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions for you, but first I just wanted to say those lessons that you went through were amazing. I've got a couple of notes here about lesson 4, taking Semver seriously. Such a big thing. It has tripped up, as somebody who's used NPM packages, products which don't use Semver seriously can cause so many unintended consequences further down the line when they introduce breaking changes. And I very much enjoyed lesson 7, the imposter syndrome one. It is so important for people to realize, yeah, it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody does. And just to keep on getting back on that horse.
I'm glad. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions now. So why is SQS Lite better than local stack?
So SQS Lite is better in the way that it is lightweight, primarily for that reason, where you don't have to spin up the entire local stack and configure it and run it and have many requirements that it needs. SQS Lite allows you to just import the node module and quickly hit your code against SQS Lite. So in that sense, it's just lightweight. It's easy to use. It's more. I don't want to call it user friendly. It's more easy.
Okay, but are there any circumstances when you'd use real AWS over SQS Lite?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, you would use real AWS if you want to test for scalability, if you want to test for speed. SQSLite essentially just verifies the correctness of your code, where when you send the message, when you receive the message, you get correct responses, but you cannot rely on SQSLite to test how quickly your application will run, how it will run in parallel, how it would scale. So there is absolutely use for both local stack and for real AWS. SQS is just a first stage in the path of development with queues.
Okay. I did wonder, the very beginning of your talk, you talked about an $8,000 AWS bill. That wasn't a true story, was it? That's not happened to you yet?
No, it did not happen to me, thank God. That tweet I found on Twitter, so I assume it was somewhat real. What did happen to me is that my friend went to a boot camp, and they were using DynamoDB at the time. And she didn't tell me what she was working on, but she came to me with a question. She said, like, I registered with AWS, I put in my credit card, and now I see that the money started to disappear from my card. So she was very worried, and I remember suggesting DynaLite for her and explaining the concept of mocking. And I think this can be a scary territory for someone who's very new to this. So I think not 100% sure about that tweet. I just thought it was cool, but the issue is definitely out there.
Yeah, I think, and obviously AWS are out there to make money as well as to be helpful and help people learn. So yes, it's an easy trap to fall into. What a good way is to tell people about your open source project to drive adoption and make your module more widely used.
So this is actually something I'm going through right now. So I have built this module, but I'm trying to tell people about it, and I'm very new to this. So I would be very happy to hear the suggestions for marketing and essentially telling people. Some good things that I have found so far is speaking at conferences. That's my number one, and also tell my friends and have it adopted at Lithium on a wider scale, and potentially build a YouTube video where essentially like a coding tutorial, maybe that builds a full stack application that uses SQS Lite in the backend, where when engineers want to learn to code an application, they can see a usage of SQS Lite. So that's a shameless plug of introducing your application in there. So that's some of the ideas. That's not everything, but it's my current challenge of showing my work and getting the feedback and improving on it, and potentially thinking of other projects I can build.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, there's a lot of virtual applause for you on the chat channel, but I have no further questions. So if anybody needs to reach out to you to ask any questions, or if they have got any thoughts or comments, are you available on Twitter?
Absolutely. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Definitely a great experience.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Jenny. It's been great having you.
Yeah.
Okay. And there she goes. Bye.